All right, guys, let's jump right into it. We got a pretty heavy boat tonight. It's the Prep Spotlight presented by the Jacobs Insurance Agency, local, independent, and trusted. Where do we want to go? Do we want to start local here, or Jared, do you want to get yours out of the way?
Oh, I think we start local. I mean,
Okay.
the Corona, it's a killer, man. I mean, we're gonna be rooting for him, but the snooze to you, we love that guy. But man, talk about a team that had a tale of two different brackets. It's
Yes.
Corona.
Yeah.
You went from having what I would say pretty much almost, I would say they're gonna be the favorite in most of those games leading up until Pontiac Notre Dame Prep, and I believe the semifinals. To now, you got to play Pontiac Notre Dame Prep at Notre Dame Prep in round two. That's a killer.
Yeah, that's where I was going to start too. D5, District 1. Cavaliers at home, at least. They were the D5 state runner-up a year ago. A lot of talent came back. As you talked about it, though, we've talked about it before. District of death, really, with a potential trip to Pontiac Notre Dame on the road if they get by week 1 against Hamady. And, Cavs are battling a couple of critical injuries. And, it is next man up for Coach Steve Herrick. But to move on, the Cavs are going to have to rely heavily on their skilled and experienced lines and senior quarterback Caden Cowdery. He's thrown for over 1,300 yards on the season, 12 TDs to go along with 625 yards rushing and three 6-pointers. I'm going to be at the Cavalier Nicanese Field on Friday night. It's not our live game, but I'll be there. We're going to try something new this year. I'm going to be phoning in some live scoring reports in the game we are carrying, which is Ovid Elsie at Almont. And that's my next one. That's Division 6, District 2. Marauders lost their regular season finale to fall to 7-2, but still have quite a few points. But they got a real tough draw on the road over towards the Thumb, Almont. I'm not sure if they're ranked 1 or 2 in the state in that division, but that's a tough matchup. But if the Marauders can step up, I mean, they made the semifinals last year, and Chesaning should get by Lansing Catholic, but don't look past them. We've seen that happen before.
Man. Remember Lansing Catholic versus Durand?
I know.
Years ago. It's tough because LTC has that championship pedigree, and it's a type of offense they spread you way out. It's almost like a college offense that a team like Chesaning just hardly sees. So that's a tough draw. I think Chesaning will squeak by, but that's a 50-50 game in my opinion, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, not you mentioned Almont. I mean, they're 9-0. So Chesaning, here's your reward for having a 9-0 regular season. Obviously they have the state championships to their, that they won a while ago, but this is potentially one of their big historic seasons. 9-0. Here you go. Well, Almont, that's 9-0, and then even OE, even though they did drop 2 games, they finished the season 7-2. If Ovid LC could somehow beat Almont, and then you have a potential rematch, that's just tough. If a rematch is never a good idea. So it's kind of like, here you go, Chesaning. Congrats on the awesome regular season. Good luck getting out of your district.
I saw a lot of people call that, like, not even just us in our area, but across the state. Like, that's the division of death.
Yeah.
In this year's playoffs, it really seems like tough draw for both those schools, but good challenge and a good opportunity to win a couple big time games.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ovid Elsie for Coach Travis Long, for them to pick up the win, they need a big game from their quarterback, Mr. Everything, Trice Tokar. Chesaning, as we've already talked about a little bit, needs to disregard Lansing Catholic's record. We've seen what they've done in the past, but their 3-tool man, Braden Florian, he led the state in rushing last year. He's booted a 56-yard field goal, and he's going to be a key for the Indians' success if they go deep at all. Him and quarterback Max Volk.
You never know. You never know if a game comes down to a field goal, and if you've got to, we saw the Corona game, a couple weeks ago came down to a field goal. So you never know when you need that kicker.
Right. And, the other thing I did notice, it's funny when you start looking at the playoff points, and we've talked about it before. Some of these schools have made it in with losing records because of who they play. Corona, they play in a real tough league. They have 59 points. I think they're third in their entire division with playoff points. And the Marauders and Chesaning, their playoff points don't stack up near to what Almont does. So its strength of schedule means a lot the way the playoffs are currently set up.
It does, but it also doesn't. I mean, you're saying that they really don't seed the bracket. It's all about where you're located, essentially.
Right. Well, they sort of seed it in your geographic area. I mean, they seed it by the amount of points in the district anyway.
Right. But what good does it do you? It's a shame, man. I mean, Corona's got maybe the toughest draw of anybody. And I didn't know that they had the third most playoff points. We don't need to harp on the system. It's not a perfect system. It's doable. If you're a good team, you're going to win the state title. but
Right.
we can table that for maybe next year.
Right.
And that's what it comes down to. If you're good enough, you're going to get through your district and you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I thought I'd throw this in there since we carried their games on the radio the last 3 weeks. St. John's on the road at DeWitt. DeWitt's another powerhouse this year. It's going to probably the best team in that division. So the Red Wings probably going to be 1-0. They need a perfect game, and they need Brandon Szumowicz to be back healthy. But that's going to be a tough task for the Red Wings for sure. In Division 8, District 1, Reese taking on the Fowler Eagles. Eagles, again, a real powerful team. I think they're ranked number 1 in Division 8 or 1 or 2. They made the playoffs, guys. You know, we've talked about New Lothrop before, and I'm going to talk a little bit about them again here before we wrap this segment. Eagles have made the playoffs a record 36 out of the 50 years they've had the MHSAA sponsored tournament. Just amazing for, that Class D school. John Spicer's squad, 3 wins over D7 qualifiers this year, including PW, and we know how good they are year in and year out. In 8-man football here locally, in Division 2, Morris Orioles 8-1. They get a chance for a little revenge against Portland St. Patrick. The Shamrocks gave them their only loss of the year, and this one's going to take place at the Field of Dreams over there in Morris. It's their 10th trip to the dance in the last 11 years. Kendall Crock has just done a great job over there at Morris, without a doubt.
Yep.
Some of their key players, Joel Fisher and Wyatt Cartier, both rushed for over 1,000 yards, and sophomore Wyatt Valentine, 8 picks to lead the defense, which gives up only 10 points a game, a little bit under 10 points a game in an 8-man football. That's pretty impressive, because it's a wide open game.
Wasn't one of the state title games last year? I feel like I remember talking about it, or maybe I just looked it up. There was one of the teams that won. I think it Martin scored like 74 points in the state championship game. So
Yikes.
I know you've talked about 8-man football is wide open. So
it is
electric.
It's kind of fun to broadcast too, I mean,
right.
it's quick pace for sure. Before I wrap this part up, couple shout outs. A shout out to the Owasso Trojans. They just missed the playoffs, finishing 5-4, their first winning season since 2012. They broke 14 team offensive records, tied 2 others. They're definitely going to miss Hoyt Patrick, but I mean, he was a stud on both sides of the ball. But his brother's back, Liam. They got a good junior and sophomore class, so things are looking up for Ron Tyner and the Trojans. And I started to mention a little bit the New Lothrop Hornets. They've had a hell of a run. Missing out of the playoffs this year, though, for the first time in 25 years. Clint Galvis, with his 2 state championships, he's going to have a lot of extra fire in his belly to get ready for next season.
Oh, he's already scheming for next year. He's like the scene at the end of Friday Night Lights, the movie. Billy Bob Thornton's taking down the depth chart. Clint Galvis he's already doing that. He's getting ready for next year. But yeah, first time since 1999 that they're missing the playoffs. Same with Muskegon. Missing the playoffs for the first time since 1999. So yeah, 2 historic programs in their respective areas and divisions not making the playoffs. That's a big deal. And I saw with Muskegon, they won the state championship last year. So obviously a new state champion in that division, Division 2. Southfield A&T also, they won the state championship last year in D1, not in the playoffs. Wow. So couple new state champions happening in those top 2 divisions. It's kind of a cool storyline. But you mentioned, I know, Jared, you're going to give a few thoughts maybe on that Detroit area. You mentioned Snooze. So, Snooze is a friend of the podcast, and he will say his projections are not 100%. So I saw some people kind of giving him a little bit of a hard time. You got this wrong, blah, blah. And he puts it, there's always the disclaimer. This is just a projection. It's not 100% accurate, but usually it is. What did he tell you guys or us? He like 95% correct.
Pretty accurate.
I'm telling him, I know for a fact, it's kind of funny to think about. My senior year, the only team he got wrong was Corona.
Which is pretty crazy. But I was going to throw out too. So Goose Poop, another friend of the podcast, if you check out his stuff, he does a lot of point spreads and predictions and going off of like kind of like gambling type stuff. I don't want to say gambling because it's high school, but it's kind of like, Vegas style lines and that kind of stuff. But he put out his latest thing was his projections, who can win each division. Corona, some of the area teams, not at the top of his list right now. In D5, Corona's number 10. Pontiac Notre Dame Prep is actually number 2, the second best odds to win the division. OE and Chesaning, 7 and 8 in their division. Almont's number 2. So some of our area teams, that was just a quick glance at it. Some of our area teams have a little bit of a tough hill to climb,
Yeah,
according to Goose Poop's projections.
If this was like the college football playoff and like where, it's like Big Ten, ACC, like who got the best draw, this, that, like us mid-Michigan, us Shiawassee County, we got bludgeoned on
Right.
Sunday, man.
Yep.
That's just the reality. But
It is.
like we talked about, 2-3 minutes ago, if you're the best team, doesn't matter who's in front of you, you're going to find a way to win those games.
So who is it? So Southfield A&T not in the playoffs. It's got to be Belleville, right? That's what.
Yeah. So,
but they lost to Howell.
Yeah.
So
tough one to Howell. Yeah.
So I'll throw out a few of my quick thoughts on the Detroit area, as we'll hear from other experts who know a lot more than I do. But yeah, you mentioned it, Howell. I mean, what a fun team that is. That's high school football at its finest. I mean, Belleville might have more talent, but Howell, pure wing team. My favorite part of their squad, Bobby Kanka, who plays defensive end and tight end for Howell, wears number 14. He's going to play interior lineman at Michigan, but because they just have this massive offensive line that's almost like a college offensive line that can beat teams like Belleville, he plays tight end for them. So I just like, what more do you need to know about a wing T, Howell high school football team than the fact that their offensive line is so good that they have a Michigan interior lineman recruit playing tight end for them, wearing number 14. It's hilarious. They're damn good. And it's just, what a perfect encapsulation of high school football that Howell versus Belleville game really was. Came down to the last play.
No
Both
doubt.
Teams, that's what high school football is all about. Those Friday night lights. What a great game. So I'm definitely excited to see what Howell does. And that they're just going to be able to bludgeon, quote unquote, Mullings people to death in the playoffs. Another hopeful potential matchup I can't wait to see. Undefeated Detroit Catholic Central potentially would be facing Belleville in the regional final. That would be the third round of the playoffs. I just think that's a great program-defining win for both sides. Justin Sassante, in his second year at Detroit Catholic Central as a head coach, has really gotten things going this year. They're a damn talented squad, but Belleville's going to have the best player on the field no matter who they play, and it's at the most important position, quarterback, Bryce Underwood. I think that game in the regional final is one to circle as maybe the game of the entire playoffs. That's going to be a fun one to watch. Can't wait for that one. Then finally, I'll just throw this one out real quick. This, to me, is the story of the area. That's Birmingham Groves. 9-0, Division II team. Brendan Flaherty's their head coach. Been there a long, long time. Damn good coach. This seems to be kind of his time. This is his legacy team. I mean, they are loaded. They have an awesome offensive lineman, Avery Gawk, who's committed to Michigan, and most notably, Barry Sanders' son, Noah Sanders, is the running back running behind that loaded offensive line. That's one of those teams, like, I'm working the state finals. That's one of those teams, man, you pray to God they make it there because the stories are abundant with Birmingham Groves. So it's going to be fun. The playoffs, I think D1 is as open as it's really ever been, in my opinion, with Belleville clearly showing that they can be beat on any given night. So I can't wait, man. It's going to be an awesome playoffs. And judging from last year's state finals results, where every game was a good game at Ford Field, I think we're due for that again this year.
Well, awesome stuff, guys, with good preview of what's going on in mid-Michigan, the Detroit area. And let's go elsewhere and see what the other experts in the state have to say in their territories.
Jacobs Insurance Agency has served Shiawassee County and the surrounding areas since 1977. Just like 3 Point Podcast, we've had 3 generations: Gary Jacobs Sr., Gary Jacobs II, Brian Jacobs, and myself, Noah Jacobs, serving our community with offices in Waterford and Owasso on M21, just west of Home Depot. Stop in or go online to jacobsinsurance.com to get a quote or get your questions answered by our team. Jacobs Insurance is a proud supporter of our local schools and the proud sponsor of the Prep Spotlight. Insure everything, local, independent, and trusted. It's our family working together to protect yours. That's the Jacobs way.
Yousef, Nasser of ABC 12 Sports checking in with my guys at the 3 Point Podcast. Playoffs right around the corner. Here are some of my top storylines that I'm curious to see unfold. In Division I, could we see a rematch of that instant classic that we saw in the SVL Red Championship game between Davison and Grand Blanc 2 weeks ago? The Bobcats will face Lapeer in the first round, while Davison will face Oxford. If both GB and Davison were to advance, they would square off, and the Bobcats would host that matchup. That was an absolute fireworks show. Grand Blanc getting the win behind Jake Morrow's 7-touchdown performance. But the Cardinals have a terrific quarterback in his own right with Jackson Dosh the junior. Looking forward to see that matchup if it were to unfold, as those teams represent a great chance for our area to be represented deep into the Division I playoffs. Another story to watch is a heated rivalry game in the first round of the playoffs. Linden and Fenton in Division III. The Tigers got a narrow road victory against the Eagles on October 4th, winning that game 24-21. Keep in mind, Fenton has only lost to Linden once since 2012, a loss in the district finals against the Eagles in 2022 when Bryce Eluke had one heck of a performance, 295 yards. By halftime of that game, that's a loss that motivates the Tigers to this day. Should be a great one between those two Flint Metro League schools. Third thing I'm interested in seeing is how many state finalists we get from our coverage area. In 2022, we had 4 teams make it, with Gladwin defeating Frankenmuth to bring home the D5 state title. And last year, we had the Corunna Cavs as well as Ubley going to Ford Field, with the Bearcats ultimately winning the D8 state championship. Division 4 and Division 5 have been particularly strong in mid-Michigan relative to the rest of the state. Goodrich and Frankenmuth have been 2 of the best teams I've seen this year. Those are 2 schools I have my eyes on representing the ABC 12 viewing area in Detroit a few weeks from now. That's going to do it for me, Yousef Nasser with ABC 12 Sports. I'm going to turn it over to my guys with the 3 Point Podcast.
This is Jason Hutton, and here's 3 things I find interesting heading into the high school football playoffs in 2024. We start in Division II, where you have 3 of the top 9 teams in the state in terms of playoff points, all playing in the same district. Northview won the OK Black. They had their first perfect regular season in more than 50 years, and yet the Wildcats find themselves packing their bags and heading south to Byron Center for the opening round of the playoff game. The 8-1 Bulldogs have more playoff points. They're the 2 seed, and they'll host Northview in what should be a whale of an opener. Meanwhile, Mona Shores is the 1 seed. They host Traverse City West. It's a loaded district, no doubt. The winner of this district will have a chance to make a deep run in the playoffs. And what's even more interesting is it does not include defending state champion Muskegon, who missed the playoffs for the first time since 1999. Crazy. How about in Division 3, where John Shillitoe leads a Zeeland West team that I think has to be considered one of the handful of favorites to win a state championship. The Ducks are 8-1. Their only loss is to a very good Unity Christian team. Shillitoe has led Zeeland West to 4 state titles. He has 335 career wins, 7th most in state history. Is this the year that Coach Shillitoe and the Ducks make it 5 state championships? They are the 2 seed in their district. There is potentially a district final looming with 8-1 St. Joseph. If it happens, it would be the 3rd time in 4 years these 2 schools have met in the postseason. And number 3, Unity Christian in Division 4. The Crusaders have been dominant this year. 9-0. They knocked off Pontiac Notre Dame Prep in the regular season finale, handing the Irish their only loss of the season. So as this year Unity Christian gets it done, remember this group of seniors were freshmen in 2021 when that unbelievable Crusader team lost that epic state final to Chelsea 55-52. So can Craig Tibby's bunch get it done this year, have an undefeated season and win it all? They have to be considered the favorite in Division 4. Those are the 3 things I'm watching this postseason. I'm Jason Hutton. I'll be calling the Lakeshore Game of the Week on 107 MUS The Moose. We have Whitehall and Forest Hills Eastern this Friday.
Hey everyone, this is Austin Szumowicz from WNEM TV5 Sports. Glad to be joining my guys at the 3 Point Podcast once again. With playoffs finally here for high school football, there are plenty of exciting matchups that got announced on Sunday. Let's go through a couple of them that caught my eye. First of all is our game of the week for Friday Night Lights. It's Clare versus Ogemaw Heights. This will be a rematch of the top 2 teams in the Jack Pine Conference, with Ogemaw Heights winning the conference title in their first year in the JPC. The Falcons got the win over the Pioneers back in week 1. A little bit of a rematch between these 2 teams should be an exciting one. Meanwhile, in Division 8, it's a Big Thumb Conference rematch between Ubley and Harbor Beach. These 2 teams went at it earlier in the season. Harbor Beach got the decisive win on their 9-0 season, winning the Big Thumb Conference. These 2 going back at it is always exciting. It's always a rivalry match. Harbor Beach may be favored, but there is a chance for an Ubley upset. Should still be an exciting match in the Big Thumb. In Division 3, we'll have a Flint Metro League rematch between the Linden Eagles and the Fenton Tigers. Fenton opened the year with a 7-game winning streak. A win over Linden was one of those, but it was only by 3 points. It was their smallest victory on the season, So Linden fought hard. They finished the year 4-5. Going into this game, it should be an interesting one because they just escaped with a 3-point win over the Eagles. Fenton looking to make it out of districts for the first time since 2016. Linden looking for a revenge win, and this could be a very close one just like that first matchup, so it could be a very interesting match come Friday night. You have just 3 Mid-Michigan teams in Division 1. Grand Blanc will be going up against Lapeer, Davison going up against Oxford. This is an interesting one because Grand Blanc upset the Davison Cardinals to win the Saginaw Valley League Red title, but then the very next week, in Week 9, they lost to a 3-win Romeo squad in an upset loss. Davison got a dominant victory over Lapeer to close out the regular season. So if Grand Blanc gets the win over Lapeer, Davison gets the win over Oxford, that rematch, especially in district finals, could be incredibly intriguing. Both teams got to make it out of the semifinals first, so both of those games could be interesting just for what we could possibly see in district finals. Finally, we have 5 remaining undefeated teams in Mid-Michigan that are looking to make big playoff runs starting on Friday. In Division 5, you have the Frankenmuth Eagles. They're very familiar playing at Ford Field, looking to make it back. Chesaning has been on an incredible 9-0 season in Division 6. Meanwhile, in Division 7, you have 2 schools, the Ithaca Yellow Jackets and the Millington Cardinals, that are undefeated. Finally, in Division 8, we mentioned them already, Harbor Beach will be facing Ubley. They are also undefeated, looking to move to 10-0 with another win over the Bearcats. It's win or go home now. Playoffs have arrived in high school football, and it's going to be an exciting few weeks as teams try to make it all the way to Ford Field. I'm Austin Szumowicz from WNEM TV5 Sports. Thanks again to the 3 Point Podcast for having me back on. And tune into Friday Night Lights on WNEM TV5 News at 11 every Friday night for all your high school football highlights.
Beedon here from GetStuckOnSports.com. Excited to be talking postseason football with the guys at 3 Points Podcast. For those of you who don't know, we cover the Blue Water area, so St. Clair, Macomb County, a little bit of Sanilac County, and a little bit of Lapeer County in there. All in all, we had 12 schools qualify for the postseason, from smallest to largest in terms of enrollment. In 8-man football Division 1, we had Deckerville. In Division 8, we had Ubley, we had Harbor Beach, we had Marine City, Cardinal Mooney. D6, Almont, Marine City. D5, Armada and Richmond. D4, Croslex, Marysville, St. Clair. D3, Port Huron High, and D2 and Port Huron Northern. Some of the things to look out for in this postseason from the Blue Water area is in D5 at Ted, as I'm sure you guys are well aware, Armada pretty darn good this year, and they are poised to make a big run. They get a favorable matchup in the early going, a rematch with Richmond, a team they beat 42-0 in the regular season, and then a matchup between either Hazel Park or Southlake in the district final. But then it would be a huge showdown with Notre Dame Prep, probably the 2 favorites on the right side or the east side of the bracket to make it to Ford Field. I know Kyle Rowley and his crew thinking they can have a historically great year for the Armada Tigers. In D6, I mentioned Almont and Marine City, 2 teams that have made no strangers to Ford Field over the years, but they could play each other this year in the postseason. In a big surprise on Selection Sunday, Almont gets pulled west with Ovid Elsie, Chesaning, Lansing Catholic in that district. Marine City stays on the east side of the bracket. They will be in a district with Warren Collegiate. That is due to be one of the biggest district finals in any division in the state. They'd have to get Marine City, that is, would have to get past Lumen Christi to get to a state final. A tall task, but there's ever a program to do it, Marine City is one of those that are known to win those big-time games. In D8, you want to talk about one of the pound-for-pound toughest districts in the state. How about 9-0 Harbor Beach, 8-1 Clarkston Everest, who just lost in the Prep Bowl by a foot in overtime, and Ubley, while 6-3, they have won their last 6 games, and their 3 losses have lost a combined 2 games. That district in D8, I would almost assure you, is going to produce a team at Ford Field, although the winner of that one likely has to get through Fowler. Real quick, some other hits to go off of. Port Huron Northern has had a great season. Unfortunately, they draw De La Salle. If they get past them, they'll either have to beat Roseville or Grosse Pointe South. Port Huron High, despite being 4-5, have a home game. I'm sure you boys will love that conversation with Port Huron High. Losing record home game in the playoffs. They take on Grosse Pointe North. Marysville and Croslex played for just the first time since 2008 in an opening round matchup. Marysville, best record since 2016, looking to make a big run there. St. Clair back in the playoffs after only winning 5 games the last 2 years combined under Coach Andrew Zelkowski in his first season at the helm. That'll do it for all the postseason things to talk about here from GetStuckOnSports.com. Oh, real quick, 8-man, Deckerville, they might be the favorite to win the state title. Look out for Bill Brown and those Eagles. That's all I have for GetStuckOnSports.com from the Blue Water area. You can listen to our radio broadcast all the way through at GetStuckOnSports.com. Appreciate you guys inviting me on to talk football here in the postseason for 3 Points Podcast. I'm Brady Beedon.
Hi, this is Brian Calloway from the Lansing State Journal with a look at some interesting storylines as the playoffs are concerned in Greater Lansing. I'll start with DeWitt, which went 9-0 in the regular season and had one of the best playoff point totals in the entire state, finishing with the 3rd most playoff points. DeWitt has the top playoff point total in Division III and has the look of a team that could be a very strong state title contender like they were in 2020 and 2021 under Coach Rob Zimmerman. The Panthers, had some impressive wins during the regular season. They knocked off Hazlitt, they beat Mason, they beat East Lansing. They wrapped up the outright CAAC Blue title last weekend with a 55-20 win over Everett as well too. Elliott and Abram Larner have been dominant players for them and put up some very big numbers while fueling an offense that has been averaging close to 50-some points a game. I think they scored 597 points during the regular season or some insane amount of points like that. They set the school record for points in the game twice this season, scoring 69 against Hazlitt and then 70 in a win over Hurricane, West Virginia as well too. So they've been absolutely dominant this season. They could be home through the regional as well too. So I'm expecting good things from them in the playoffs. Ithaca is in a similar situation like DeWitt and could be home through the regional round of the playoffs. But what I'm watching with them is that they could have a very tough district championship game against Pewamo Westphalia. Pewamo Westphalia has lost twice this season, but those 2 losses have come by a combined 4 points. When you look at falling in a tight game to rival Fowler, and then they lost by 1 to close the regular season against Lansing Catholic as well too. But I think that could be a very interesting district final if it unfolds, and so it could be a very challenging step in the road for Ithaca, which completed a 2nd straight perfect regular season and has had a lot of success in the playoffs over the years up there. Looking at Division 6, Ovid Elsie and Lansing Catholic ended in the top 10 of the coaches' rankings, but they find themselves in very difficult district when you look at Chesaning and Almont, who are both unbeaten, being their opponents this week. That's just a very challenging road for both of those teams to have to go through. Ovid Elsie is coming off the run to the state semifinals last year in Division 6. And, whoever comes out of that district, whether it's Lansing Catholic, whether it's Ovid Elsie, whether it's Almont, or whether it's Chesaning, those teams are going to be battle tested just based on having to go through 2 top 10 teams in order to get through. The other thing I'm looking at in Greater Lansing, there's a lot of things to look at, but one of the things that has piqued my interest is Leslie football. Leslie has had one of its best seasons in over a decade. I think they went 8-1 in the regular season. They bounced back from their lone loss of the regular season that they suffered in Week 8 to beat previously unbeaten Hanover Horton to win the Cascades Conference Championship this past Saturday. The Blackhawks are led by sophomore quarterback Joel Cranmore. He's got a very dangerous receiver option, and Jaden Colby as well too. Both of those players have put up big numbers to fuel what's been a very strong season for Leslie, which hasn't won 8 games in a season since 2012. So they've been a very good story in our area, and it'll be interesting to see if they can carry that over into the postseason and just do some things that they haven't done in a long time. It's been a while since that program has even hosted a playoff game as well too. So definitely been a big season for the Blackhawks. This is again Brian Calloway from the Lansing State Journal for 3 Point Podcast. You can follow me on X at Brian_Calloway.
I'm Tyler Young from Fox Sports Marquette. Let's take a look at 3 interesting things from the UP football playoffs for 3 Point Podcast. Firstly, Pickford is going to be the team to beat in 8-player Division I. They're averaging about 55 points a game, and I don't see anyone stopping them. And the real story, is Tommy Story, their quarterback. He has been phenomenal. If he continues to do as well as he has this season, Pickford's going to be almost impossible to beat. I mean, I've seen him play at least a couple times, and they are very good. By the way, their first playoff game is going to be against Munising. They just played them last week. Final score was 64-8. A little one-sided there. Going to 11 player now, one team that's in from the UP that I think has a great potential for a run is Iron Mountain. The combination of Ian Martle, their quarterback, and their tight end Oscar Kangas has been deadly this season. They're coming off a win over Nagani to end the season, and their district, there's not a lot of challenge in it as far as I'm concerned. You've got East Jordan, Bark River, and Manistee. Bark River, I think, has the best chance to do something against Iron Mountain. I don't think they're going to be able to. Iron Mountain will win the district, and I think they are poised for a very good deep run in the playoffs. For Marquette, they're not in the playoffs. A little surprising given the fact that they're 6-3, but the problem is they're in Division 2. That's my third point, is Marquette in Division 2 is the fifth team out of the postseason. They've been D3 for several years. In Division 3 this year, they would have been in comfortably, but because of their schedule, they don't play enough big teams. They play UP teams, they play downstate teams in their conference, and it hurts them because they don't get the playoff points and the bonus points from playing other D2 schools. They didn't play any D2 schools this year. Most of them were D4 and below. So for Marquette, obviously you're thinking, well, wait a minute, we're 6-3. Are we being punished for where we are in the state? Hard to say that, but not exactly a great feeling for Marquette. 6-3, 50.111 playoff point average, which would have had them, I think, 20th in Division 3, puts them 37th in Division 2, and they are out. For the 3 Point Podcast, I'm Tyler Young.
All right, great stuff. We really do appreciate our friends of the pod helping us out, throughout the state, bringing great insight. They always participate in the Prep Pigskin preview, and now the Prep Pigskin playoff preview. So a lot of P's there.
A lot of P's, a lot of threes, but no, you said it. We appreciate it because really we've got a good group of people that, they have crazy schedules just like us. And when we ask, they usually deliver. So
right.
Even sometimes on short notice. So no, we appreciate them giving us some insight.
For sure.
Again, the Prep Spotlight presented by the Jacobs Insurance Agency. Make sure you give them a call. Local, independent, and trusted. Well, we'll get back and we'll take a look at professional football and college football. We had a couple interesting games last weekend. We'll get into it right after this.